Hello everyone and welcome to this video. Now today I'm going to be doing an album review. I'm going to be taking a look at this record here, which is Nonsuch by XTC. So yeah, I've had this video requested quite a few times by a user called Andy Langford and another one called Juniper Tree. So thank you very much for requesting this video. I finally got round to reviewing XTC's 1992 album here. So yes, I'll just be doing my usual thing in this video, giving a bit of background information about it, then showing you my vinyl copy of it here, and then looking at each of the album's tracks in detail. So yeah, this was XTC's 12th studio album, released on the 27th of April in 1992. So basically by this point in their kind of journey, their arc as a band, they basically crashed out of commercial consciousness in the UK music scene. However, they had found a new audience in America, particularly on college radio. Now, despite this late career success, in America, they were still struggling financially and were essentially broke as a band. So extreme was their financial situation that bass player Colin Moulding and guitarist and arranger Dave Gregory ended up working in a car rental dealership for a short time between Oranges and Lemons and this album. Now, they made a very conscious point with this album of recording it in the UK. In this case, Chipping Norton, their last two releases had both been recorded in America. So yeah, they were very much, I think, with this record keen to stay close to their families, but also I think as well conscious not to let too much American influence creep into their music. XTC were always a very British band, thinking of albums like English Settlement and Mama, in particular. So I think they were perhaps in some way wanting to return to their sort of roots. Now, the content of this album does see XTC moving away from the kind of in-your-face bombastic nature of Oranges and Lemons, and more towards a more moody and mature kind of feel, with Partridge composing the majority of his songs on the piano, and his lyrics on this album in particular becoming a bit more political. He was writing songs which made a point thing, perhaps about society, but also continuing songs about his own experiences, his own relationships as well. Now, as with a lot of XTC albums, the making of this record was not without its difficulties. So the initial demos that the band produced for the album were not well received by their label Virgin Records, who, after hearing some 32 songs Partridge and Moulding had prepared for them, Virgin said, "These aren't good enough, you have to scrap them all and write 12 new songs," sort of thing. However, the band did hold their ground, and that particular executive at Virgin was soon done away with. And by 1991, some new people had come in who rather liked these songs that XTC had pulled together, so they were free to record the album as they had originally intended. Now, in terms of producer for this album, it was produced by a guy called Dos Judson, who was a very much a veteran producer, had worked with the likes of Elton John on some of his classic releases, and I think had produced Space Oddity by David Bowie as well. So going right back to the late 60s. You also had seasoned session player Dave Mattox on drums on this album. Now, interestingly, I'd read that they had considered getting back in Steve Lillywhite and Hugh Padgham to produce. Gus Dudgeon was very much not their first choice as producer, so they'd originally wanted Lillywhite and Padgham to come back into the fold. And it's interesting because they had produced the band's more rockier albums like Black Sea and Drums and Wires. So perhaps their initial thought was to go back to more of that sound. But Dudgeon, as I said, was very much not their first choice, and a bit their relationship with Todd Rundgren, or specifically Andy Partridge's relationship with Todd Rundgren while making the Skylocking album, they did run into some issues working with Dudgeon on here. So there were certain things I think Dudgeon wanted to sort of remove a couple off the tracks, make the album a bit shorter, but the band weren't having that. He was also fired towards the end of the album, during the mixing sessions for it, after his 3 attempts to mix the album didn't satisfy either the band nor their record label. Now, upon its release in April of 1992, the album received almost universal critical acclaim, with publications such as the Sunday Morning Post saying that it was a multi-dimensional feast that shows XTC at its most adept and affecting, while the Enemy said that it would be an improvement to anyone's record shelf. However, other critics did note the rather lengthy running time of the album, and said that perhaps some of the fat could be trimmed off it. In terms of its commercial success, in the UK, it charted at number 28, which was the same placing that Oranges and Lemons had got, which between them were XTC's first top 30 albums since English Settlement. But it only reached number 97 in America, which was a significant drop compared to Oranges and Lemons placing off at number 44. However, it did continue their kind of cult success again, America reaching number 1 on Rolling Stone's college albums chart. So I will try to show you my vinyl copy of it here. This is a original, I'm not sure if it's a UK or European pressing, but it's certainly one of the early pressings that came out, which is a little bit rarer now. You've got a fantastic cover here which depicts Henry VIII's Nonsuch palace that he had constructed and was, I think, demolished only about 100 years after it was originally built there. The back of it here has these lovely little illustrations to go along with each of the tracks, which is really nice. And then on the inside here, you have got, there's no gatefold or anything with this particular version, but you've got 2 inner sleeves here just with the lyrics and credits on them. And then on the other one, just more lyrics and credits, and then some nice photos of the band there. And then my records here are just in these kind of protective sleeves, which is quite nice. I think, they just came in this when I bought them. Not sure if it was originally like this. And then just the label is on a rather basic, generic Virgin Records label there, and same for the other record there. So yeah, that is the vinyl looked at. So anyway, that has me now gone over the vinyl here. So I'll now look at each of the album's tracks in detail. I'll score each song out of 10, and then use those scores to give us a overall percentage marking for the album. So the album kicks off with the track The Ballad of Peter Pumpkinhead, which is an upbeat, kind of bright, kind of very poppy sort of sounding song to kick off the album, about a kind of, seemingly kind of perfect man who kind of comes to a town. He sings that he feeds the starving and house the poor, showed the Vatican what gold's for, is a great line on it as well. But it's then kind of this guy's then kind of cut down to size by a government who would slur his name, and he dies grinning on live TV, goes the lyrics as well. So, it's a kind of story of it's kind of has echoes of the story of Jesus Christ, but also the music video depicts the assassination of JFK as well. So there's possibly a lot of different inspirations behind this track here. It's a really good song, I think. It's maybe a bit longer, so there's a lot of verses to it. It's got kind of quite classic kind of Dylan-esque kind of structure where it kind of follows a narrative and then kind of keeps coming back to a main kind of chorus sort of thing. This was the second single issued from the album, and it was a hit particularly in America, where it topped the US modern rock charts on its initial release, and then was later a mainstream chart hit when it was covered by a band called the Crash Test Dummies. I think it was featured in a film in the early 90s, and became a bit of a minor hit. But no, a really good song there to kick off the album. Okay, now the second track up is a Colin Moulding song, and it is a really good one. It's called My Bird Performs, and this is easily his best track on the album. It's just got such a great atmosphere to it, this one here. Very kind of laid back, really nice sort of swirling guitars on it, great trumpet and kind of fugelhorn parts on it as well, and there's just this really interesting kind of drum rhythm from Dave Mattox as well. Lyrically, it's quite an optimistic song, basically about kind of being pleased at how your life is going. There's some really great lyrics on it, a line around a different kind of tinsel decorates my tree, 1,000 Cheshire Crats are grinning inside of me as well, and it's just a really nice and pleasant song there. So that would get another 10 out of 10. then the next one up is another really good one called Dear Madam Barnum. Now this one it's got a kind of circusy kind of theme to this one here, about a kind of, about a man who's basically being made a fool of and kind of, resigning like as like a clown like off like the circus, but inspired kind of very much by the kind of breakdown like off like a relationship kind of. I think this kind of predates Partridge's own divorce, but it's kind of there's obviously was maybe stuff like bubbling like under like the surface here, but it's a surprisingly peppy song considering what the lyrics like are saying. It's a really interesting structure, this one, like as well. It's essentially just a series of verses separated by two kind of bridge sections, which are quite different and quite distinct. Reminds me a bit of the structure of there's a Beatles song called I'll Be Back, which has got a kind of similar structure. And I mean, Partridge said that this song was very much a kind of attempt to write a kind of mid-60s kind of like Hollies kind of esque like kind of track, and I think it's a really good song. You've got a little fun fact written about this one here, that this was that some of the crowd noise in this track that is sampled is taken from Elton John's 1974 Madison Square Garden concert, and it's precisely the moment where John Lennon comes out and that kind of joins him like on stage. That's the crowd noise you get like on Dear Madam Barnum here. So no, it's a really great song. Always been one of my favourite XTC tracks there. And then we get, for me, the first misstep on the album, and this is a bit of a probably a bit of a hot take here, because it's certainly from a lot of the research I've done for this next track is always among kind of people's kind of general favourites like on the album, but for me, Humble Daisy would get a 5 out of 10 from me. Like, unfortunately, it's a slower track, this one here, quite psychedelic like in places, with kind of like different mellotron kind of textures like on it, and kind of there's some interesting but I think a bit odd kind of vocal stuff going on. I just don't particularly like some like the backing vocals like on this one here, and I just find the song and the lyrics are just a bit boring. They just don't really speak to me much. So yeah, for me, Humble Daisy would get a 5 out of 10. It's never really been a favourite. And then unfortunately the next track is not much better, which is The Smartest Monkeys, which is Colin Moulding's second contribution to the album. Now, I do like, I was going to say the music for this, but it's maybe more the production and the kind of like the soundscape like off this one here. I think like the guitar sound is quite good, and I like there's a kind of filtered guitar solo on it, which I do quite like. But the lyrics are kind of, a little bit weaker for me on this. It's kind of, the theme of this track is kind of like the evolution of humans and how, like, we're kind of like still kind of not as smart like as like monkeys kind of thing, or we're just as smart like as like monkeys sort of thing. So kind of, like sort of talks about, like we brought the caveman from the Stone Age to the subways of the modern world, how they pack so many in, it goes. And it just seems a little bit poorly written, the lyrics, this for me. I just think again, it's never really been a favourite XTC track of mine there. The Smartest Monkeys would get 6 out of 10. But then thankfully the album does improve when we flip over to side 2, which kicks off with The Disappointed, which was, I think this is the lead-off single, which I've got in 2 versions here. I've got the 10-inch and I've got the 7-inch to it here. So The Disappointed, what a great song this is. It has its origins from a writing session that Andy Partridge did with Terry Hall. I think Partridge brought this song to Terry Hall in a slightly like unfinished state. I think he maybe had like the melody like off it, but Hall wasn't interested in it, and it's really difficult to see why, because it's a really great song. Even just the melody of it is, for me, one of Andy Partridge's absolute bests, and it's got a really interesting kind of 6/8 time signature to it. Dave Mattox is doing some incredible work like on like the drums. It's got kind of very kind of interesting syncopated pattern, which which doesn't sound oddball like or anything. It just seems to fit right in, but when you actually pay attention to it, it must have been really tricky to play. There's some great guitars throughout. The lyrics on this are great as well, talking about a kind of a group of romantically failed people who kind of band together, form this organisation collective called the Disappointed. He talks about like the disappointed all congregate at my house. Their voices sob with grief that they want me to be chief of the tribe with broken hearts. He sings on it, and yeah, it's just such a great song, this. And as a single, it actually did surprisingly well. It's a bit of a forgotten hit here, like in like the UK. It reached number 33, like on their 33, like on like the UK singles charts, and this would be the highest charting XTC single since 1982's Centres Working Overtime, some 10 years earlier. So yeah, but it's not a song which is particularly well remembered, or is even particularly well kind of thought of, even really like in like their discography, like as one of their kind of classic singles. But I think absolutely deserves to be up there. It's definitely one of my favourite like XTC songs. Okay, and then back to the album now. The next one is Holly Up on Poppy. Now, this one is another track written by Andy Partridge, but this one is inspired by his young daughter, Holly, and her rocking horse, Poppy. So it's got some really nice lines in it describing the kind of father-daughter relationship. He sings like, every second spent with her is a bulging wallet overstuffed with angels' pay, laughter. Now, I mean, this song has definitely grown on me a little bit. I still think it is maybe a little bit fillery, possibly. So I'm giving it a 7 out of 10, but it's definitely grown on me like a little bit. I do think there is a real kind of charm and lightness of touch with this song, which I do quite like. And then after that, the album does kind of veer off again into the kind of like the left field with the track Crocodile. This one is about the kind of jealousy, like in like a relationship, about like the jealousy felt like after you found out that someone's kind of left you, and how this feeling can kind of creep up on you, like when like you don't want it kind of thing. He sings like, but there's one emotion I'm afraid of. Hear him scratching gently to be fed. I can't stand it when he sits there smiling. I don't want him nesting in my head. It's got a kind of slightly rawer guitar sound on it, very kind of twangy sort of guitars like on it, which I do quite like. And the whole track kind of, well, certainly the first half of it anyway, does kind of dart around. It's quite schizophrenic, like you don't quite know where it's going sort of thing. But then for me, it kind of does lose its energy quite quickly, and I think kind of like in its second half it does kind of start to drag possibly a little bit. They maybe do the chorus kind of one too many times, like a little bit. Definitely a shorter running track would have elevated this track at least up to a 9 out of 10, but a Crocodile, I'm giving it an 8 out of 10. Okay, and then the next one up is called Rook. Now, this one is definitely one of the highlights on the album for me. It's an absolutely beautiful song, this one here. Quite basic and stripped back, very much just Andy Partridge and like the piano. And it's just got such beautiful chords on this one here, particularly the middle bit, which talks about kind of soaring up high, see the semaphores from the washing lines he sings on it. And the chords and the way he's playing the piano just really has this feeling like of suspense and sort of, like you're actually there flying kind of thing. It's just got a real, magical quality to it, this one here. Now, Andy Partridge has said, like on record, that this is one of his best songs he's ever wrote, one of his absolute favourites, and I can really see why. I think it came to him as well. I think just also the story like of how it came to him quite quickly after the period of kind of writer's block. Like he'd maybe gone maybe a couple of months or so without writing anything, and then suddenly this song kind of like appears. You've then also got a great string arrangement on it as well from Dave Gregory, and really for me kind of foreshadows where they were going to go on their next release, Apple Venus, because it is this kind of quasi kind of classical music kind of thing. It's very advanced, but really easy, like on like the years, like as well, like at like the same time. Remarkably, this is a song that Gus Dudgeon wanted to take off the album. This is what he didn't want to like have on it, but I'm so glad that it survived, and is definitely a certified XTC classic for me. Okay, we're now at the halfway point on the album. We now get out disc 2, which kicks off with Omnibus. which is an upbeat song, this one here. It's almost got a kind of show-tuney kind of quality to it, with the lyrics on this inspired by Dave Gregory, who had been kind of single for like a long time and was kind of, yeah, the lyrical viewpoint is kind of like accompanying him like on like this journey to find a partner. He sings a bit like, we'll be stopping off in every shop until you find that mate. Don't waste time, go on and taste them all. Why don't you fill your plate, like Andy Partridge sings like on it. It's got some slightly clunky lyrics on it though for me. There's some lines about, kind of celebrating women like of all races, and things like there's nothing in the world like a black-skinned girl and all that kind of stuff. Maybe hasn't aged too well. And there's a lot of bombast on this one here, a lot of blaring horns like on it, and just like that piano is very like in like your face kind of thing, like after Rook, you know, like on like the original CD coming after Rook. This kind of just shoots out the blue kind of thing, and is maybe a little bit like out of place, but it's a good song though. It is one that I do rather like when it's on there. So yeah, a 7 out of 10 for Omnibus. Okay, the next one up is That Wave. Now this one is a more kind of progressive rock kind of infused track, this one here, which again has this kind of like synesthesia kind of lyrics on it, which kind of like the music, you very much feel like you're at sea with this one here, kind of getting hit over the head with like a massive wave on it. Kind of got slightly oddball, mysterious kind of vocals going on, like in like the kind of like the verses, but then it then gives way to this simply gorgeous chorus about this overwhelming feeling like being like in love, like I was in heaven, a dress cut in leather. Like that whole bit is just gorgeous. And then to top it all off, you've got a brilliant guitar solo from Dave Gregory, one of his absolute best, alongside the likes of That's Really Super Girl. It's just a great solo, and it's just a great song. So yeah, That Wave will get a 10 out of 10.
When she appeared as the giggling crew of
And that song then gives way to And Then She Appeared, which is for me is one of my kind of favourite kind of 1-2 kind of sequencing, like on like an XTC album, with kind of that wave kind of ending. It's quite chaotic, and then suddenly this song feels like kind of like the clouds are opening up, the sunshine's coming out. It's just a beautiful jangle pop, this one here. I think it was originally intended as a Dukes of Stratosphere song, but I think it's almost too good to like have been thrown away like on that. It's just got a great jangle pop about, again, a feeling like of being like overwhelmed by like a beautiful woman, and with a lot of really interesting fun kind of metaphors and rhymes like on it, like I was a little dazzled, Catherine wheeled and senses frazzled, all Edward laid, and then she appeared. This was earmarked as a possible single as well for the album, and I think possibly would have it certainly would have had I think like a better chance of being a hit, possibly like than Peter Pumpkinhead, which was chosen like as a second single. Just think this has a bit more of a kind of commercial kind of feel to it, possibly. But no, really good song there. A 10 out of 10.
There's more dance.
And then side 1 closes off with War Dance, which is the third Colin Moulding track on the album, and it's another one I'm not too crazy about on here. It's got an interesting arrangement on it. You've kind of got synthesized kind of clarinets on it, and kind of different kind of synth parts on it. I mean, Partridge, like Andy Partridge would like later describe like those parts as like sounding like a singing penis, like he said. And I can kind of see like what he's on about. It does sound maybe a little bit limp, possibly. Lyrically, the origins of this track actually do go back quite a few years to the early 80s, the Falklands War kind of thing, which when Colin said that he started writing this song, so it took about another 10 years to finish it off. Kind of concerns kind of like British patriotism and kind of this kind of desire kind of to go off to war sort of thing. There's some good lines in it, like they're resurrecting Churchill and bringing national service back, fueling power and glory, fever makes fun of sicker Union Jack, he sings on it. So some, yeah, slightly biting lines like on it. But for me, just like the chorus like is a bit weak, and yeah, again, like the musical arrangement, it's interesting, but again, it maybe doesn't quite live up to the standards like that has been set like by the highlights on this album.
Awaken you, dreamers.
And then flipping over to side 4, the fourth and final side, we do get another one of those absolute highlights, which is Wrapped in Grey, which is another Partridge song, another kind of piano-based Partridge song, very classical, like infused again, very similar to Rook, but another masterpiece this for me about, yeah, reaching into like your own emotions to kind of try and make the world like a better place. It's got one of Andy Partridge's best lyrics on it, like your heart is a big box of paint and others the canvas we're dealt. It's just got a real, yeah, transcendent feel to like the whole track, and compositionally is again incredibly like advanced. I just don't know how he kind of been able to come up with this, you know, without having any kind of musical training, like, so to speak of. This was originally meant like as a third single from the album, but it was withdrawn like at like the last minute for reasons that I don't think anyone really knows. I'm not sure if the record company just weren't quite happy with the performance perhaps of like Peter Pumpkinhead. They thought, well, what's the point in releasing a single that's not going to do anything possibly? And this was very much set like the wheels in motion for like a long-running dispute with Virgin Records that would last another 5 to 6 years before they were like eventually released from their contract.
Did you ever try to rise away?
Okay, next up is The Ugly Underneath. Now, this one is a more kind of angry, kind of in-your-face kind of song, which harks back to the kind of Drums and Wires Black Sea kind of era, but then it's kind of been that kind of angry verse has then been bolted onto a highly melodic chorus with again some great backing vocals on it. It's just it's just quite the kind of juxtaposition like between verse and chorus like on this one. The lyrics on this again represent some more kind of political kind of writing, like from Partridge, talking about the kind of evils and double standards like of politicians, but after the voting, suck away the sugar coating. Now they've had you and they're gloating. Boy, it's ugly underneath, he sings on it. It's a short and immediate track for the first half, but then the second half goes into this really interesting kind of coda, quite an extended coda, with some great kind of like keyboard work like on it, quite atmospheric, but it does also feel a little bit bolted on, and doesn't feel like it quite belongs with the rest like off like the track. So yeah, for me, The Ugly Underneath will get a 9 out of 10.
Luxury accommodation traps the sun.
Okay, and then the penultimate track here is Bungalow, which is the fourth and final Colin Moulding track. This one here is about the kind of ordinary dream of kind of growing old, like in like a bungalow, retiring to the kind of seaside. He sings of it like working for a vision through this life so we can fly away. He sings of it. So yeah, song very much about the kind of like escapism, growing old, kind of, yeah, lyrical themes that I guess Moulding would return to on his contributions to Apple Venus, things like Fruit Nut, like those like kind of like songs. It's a track that Andy Partridge has said that he's actually jealous like that, like he didn't write, like he really rates this song. But for me, this song just doesn't really grab me too much. I think there's a lot going on this song here. It starts with the kind of fairground organ, a little bit cheesy kind of start to it, which kind of for me, you know, for a long time very much had me kind of hitting the skip button kind of as soon as like it like came on. It doesn't give way to a much more bombastic kind of like arrangement like on it. You've kind of got like a choir like going on like on this track here, and it's again just something about it just doesn't quite work for me. It's just been a song that has never really grabbed me too much. So yeah, Bungalow would get a 5 out of 10.
I believe the printed word should be forgiven.
And then we close off the album where finally we've reached the end with Books Are Burning, which is a kind of anti-censorship song, this one here, about the kind of recent controversy around the Salman Rushdie novel, novel, the Satanic Verses, with the kind of like key message of this song being like where they burn books, people are next. It's a subject matter that obviously you can tell with this track and both the lyrics and the way Partridge sings it. It's a subject he obviously had a lot of passion for, like when he wrote like this track here. But again, for me, it doesn't quite grab me, this song here. Musically, the track is probably about as close to kind of meat and potatoes rock like as like XTC like ever got. And it's just a little boring, I think. It does end the I quite like the middle section. That certainly redeems the track. You get a few more kind of harmony vocals going on like on it, which work well. And then the kind of ending of this is a long kind of guitar solo. I think it's Andy Partridge who plays it, or maybe it's Andy and Dave Gregory play it together, I think. And you've then got these kind of choral stuff on it as well. I think it was inspired by Hey Jude. It just, for me, it ends the album like on like a little bit like off like a flat note, just because again it's not really one of my favourite XTC songs. Okay, so overall, this album would score 82%. So I think this is a really good record here, but in a discography like XTC's, where basically all their albums are at least good, and most of them are very good, and some of them are bloody brilliant, this is one which probably does fall like in like the bottom half like of like their discography for me. It is a more mature, reflective and pastoral XTC, this one here. Very much I see this album and Skylocking and Mama all kind of fitting together like in like a little group kind of thing, like as like a wee kind of like thread like of albums. I think there are some absolute standout tracks like on this album, and I think it generally flows quite well. You've got kind of some crossfades like on it too, which like are like really welcome like in like my book. And like as I said, some brilliant tracks which rank among XTC's best. But it does definitely suffer from the 90s CD syndrome, where they kind of try and pack too much onto the album, fill up the full running time like off like a CD, and end up with an album that's just a bit too long and cumbersome to kind of really kind of like sort of like warrant kind of repeated listens. I would have maybe cut out around 4 to 5 tracks like on here, but also swapped out Colin Moulding's tracks, which, as you've seen there, 2 of them got a 5 out of 10, 1 of them got 6 out of 10. They're not among some of my favourite Colin Moulding tracks, and I think it's a real shame because he did have a couple of really, really great songs written around this time. There's a song called It Didn't Hurt a Bit, which I think was used as a B-side, and then another one called Where Did the Ordinary People Go, which was unreleased until 2006, I think. Both of those are far superior to anything like on this album, or certainly are both, I'd say, off the standard of My Bird Performs, which is his best song like on here. So no, it is a good record, maybe even a great record, this one, but yeah, also a flawed album too. Now, yeah, really interesting just to kind of see what would happen to XTC after this album. I think, yeah, they would get locked into like a dispute with Virgin Records, essentially go on strike for like the rest of like the 90s until they were kind of freed from their contract, and then were able to release sort of 2 further albums, with kind of, yeah, Apple Venus kind of continuing this kind of pastoral, like kind of like orchestral kind of feel to it. So yeah, no, it's definitely a really interesting, significant work here by XTC. So yes, I hope you have enjoyed my review of it. I'd be interested to know what you think of it down below in the comments, and yep, I'll see you all next time for the next video. Goodbye.
Apple Venus on a half-open chair. Then she appeared.